fucking do this. What's up, amigos? It's your buddy Ross Aru, and I'm doing my first podcast, and you're probably wondering what the fuck I'm doing. I don't know. Figuring it out myself. What I do know is that if I stick to something and keep doing it repeatedly, I might end up being mediocre at it. So guess what? I'm giving this a shot. And I've been talking about politics on the internet for about 20 years now, and part of the prestigious few who's been banned from Facebook several times. And, you know, I'm just pretty much trying to change platforms. I want to learn to get better at this so that if and when there's an idea I want to get out, then I could just hop on this and propagate my idea. So here's the rules that I'm setting for myself. Rule number 1, I'm going to do this once a week with one take. Some embarrassing shit happens. Doesn't fucking matter. The world's going to see it. And you know what? The shit's going to be cringy. I don't care. I want to keep doing it because I want to get better at this. And I think that cringe is what holds back other people. And if that's the case, then so fucking be it. You know, it's that perseverance that really pays off. And God damn it, I want to spread right-wing propaganda so badly. Next rule, 15-minute minimum. It might go longer, even better. I'm not going to complain about that. But I have to do at least 15 minutes a week. And I'm going to commit to 10 episodes, and then I'm going to reevaluate. Doesn't mean I'm not going to do it, but maybe I want to change the context. Maybe I want to change the rhythm. But, you know, it's always good to look back to where you came from and kind of redress it up. See if there's something you could do to make it even better. So with that said, celebrate our first episode with this Jesus Christ popper. And now on to more serious news. So, this is clearly a political show, and I want to make something very clear. The first thing I want to make clear is that there's an unproductive political conversation, and there's a productive political conversation. The unproductive political conversation is obsessed with convincing people to share one's beliefs. Now, the reason that's unproductive is because you'll never convince everyone to share each other's beliefs. I mean, there's always going to be an Xbox to a PlayStation. It's just ingrained in human nature to want some kind of market dichotomy. You know, there's a natural sense of rebellion in all of us. And an unproductive conversation would be if I sat here and try to convince you to be the libertarian that I am, but I'm really not concerned about that. What I'm concerned about doing is creating a productive political conversation. A productive political conversation is one where it's not centered around having the same beliefs, but centered around agreeing to how beliefs should be propagated. How can our different ideas fairly compete in the free market of ideas, and rightfully, you know, one would secede to a better idea? And that's really what I'm concerned about. When it comes to a person's politics, I really don't care if you're a communist. As long as you agree on how you can justly spread communism, then that's fine with me. And, you know, I'll touch base on this later on how you could be a right-wing communist. Actually, no, I could already tell people are rolling their eyes. I'm going to jump ahead, totally fucking up the plan already. The way you would be a right-wing communist was if we agreed that the just way to practice your communism is if you and your communist buddies went and bought a plot of land and contractually agreed to some kind of communist utopia, and the only clause would be that people can freely leave your society. That would be the only clause, but I'm jumping ahead. All right, we'll get into that later. What I'm really trying to do is reintroduce a new way of a new political theory that could be applied that's going to help make the political landscape make a lot more sense. So anyways, I'm jumping ahead. So productive conversation is one where we're more concerned on agreeing on how ideas should propagate. If you're for family values, if you're for marrying trannies, whatever the fuck you're into, we want to agree on how can we coexist and how can these ideas fairly compete. And that's really the bulk of my concern when it comes to politics, is that agreeing on the free market of ideas. The last point I want to bring politically is I'm not trying to convince everyone of this. Matter of fact, I don't really even need to. A concept I'm going to talk about pretty often on this show is the concept that most people are fucking useless. Most people don't do anything. Most people don't have ideas for themselves. There's a famous historian who went around, and what she did was she looked at successful revolutions in like the last 200-300 years or whatever. I got the book. I'll talk in more detail on some other episode. And what she did was she went through and calculated what percentage of a winning revolution was either vocally or physically active in pushing forward and winning the revolution. Now, you'd be fucking surprised. You know, most people think that you need the masses, that you need the majority in order to win a revolution, but based on her finding, no, not at all, actually. The American Revolution, if I remember correctly, was only like 3-4% of the population. The average was around 8 or 9%. So what does that tell you? That tells you that the quality of your members is a lot more important than the quantity of your members. As few of you know, I was one of the original signers for Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. You know, I kind of saw the 9/11 Truth movement blow up and then kind of fade away. And there's a lot of lessons I learned in pushing that propaganda. And you know, I'll talk more about it, and I'll talk about some strange run-ins I've had with people within the conspiracy circles the last 20 years, and even some more strange occult run-ins that I had. That's one of my more favorite. But anywho, what I learned was we were pitching to the lowest common denominator. Anyone and everyone who wanted to jump on board, we thought them as all equal. But unfortunately, that's not the case. What happened is we convinced a bunch of fucking idiots. A bunch of fucking idiots ran with the wrong evidence and pretty much undermined the entire movement. So, lesson fucking learned, man. All right. So, there's two common themes to this show. One is, I want to help people understand the political spectrum. I want people to understand the commonalities and ideas and ideologies that are not so obvious on the surface level. And I'll get into more examples of that later. But, you know, the first objective is people don't understand the political landscape. So I want to not only define the political landscape accurately, but I'm going to use vector algebra. Now listen, if you hear math and science and you're already scared, go fuck yourself, dude. That you're the people who fail in science classes. I've been a TA. I have several science degrees. And I'll tell you this right now. You could always tell who's going to fail in a science or math class. It's that person who, as soon as the professor gets on the board and they're writing equations, they're thinking to themselves, holy fuck, I have no idea what's going on. They start to panic, and when you're panicking, the last thing you can do is learn. The people who pass the class, myself, are the people who understand that you gotta fucking fake it till you make it. No one has any fucking clue what the professor's writing on the board. You just gotta sit there and just take it in and take it in, and eventually pray and hope that these pieces fall together. So in the next episode, I'm going to get into applying vector algebra to politics. But for now, just fucking calm your tits. It'll be easy. It's not difficult. And I have a feeling that some of you are going to find this really interesting, and you're going to see how it could be applied. And to kind of give you a background on vector algebra is used in physical sciences when you have things moving, right? Whether it's fucking water through a pipe, electrons through wires, whatever it may be, vector algebra becomes really handy when you have a dynamic system, when things are moving. And when you look at politics, it's a very dynamic system. Things are constantly moving, things are changing. And applying vector algebra is an obvious approach. I'm not sure if anyone else has done it. If so, kudos to them, but I'm going to be doing it too. So there's going to be a lot of vector algebra applied to the political spectrum and the political landscape, which I think a lot of you are going to find interesting. The next thing that's going to be a common theme is, listen, dude, I love watching podcasts where they talk about how fucking crazy the left is, and they give examples, and everyone laughs, and it's this super entertaining thing. That's great, right? But I don't see that as productive. Yes, the left has lost their mind. There's lots of fucking dumb people out there. We don't fucking care about them. But I really want this show to be a powwow on what do we do to win. And I got some great ideas. If you got some great ideas, DM me. You got any kind of ideas, you want me to talk about something, DM me. But we're definitely going to be a solution-based show. And by we, I mean... So we're going to be a solution-based show. And later on in the second part of the show, I am going to throw out some ideas. And I'm going to request help from the 2-3 people who are watching this show in hopes that we can do something bigger and we can end up winning this culture war after all. And yes, it is a culture war. This is not a political war. It's a cultural war disguised as a political war. So let's get to the nitty-gritty. Why is this show called True Right? The reason it's called True Right, and before I get into that, is it was very encouraging for me to kind of put on a grandstand my right-wing label right out front. And it was interesting because when I pitched this idea to my fellow right-wingers, they all recommended against it. They're all like, no, don't do that, man. It's got like a lot of bad like connotations, man. And they very much bought in to the demonization propaganda from the left, where a complete hemisphere, the political spectrum, is completely demonized, and we can in no way associate with it. So that was the first encouraging thing, and the natural rebel in me decided to go forward with it and name it True Right. So why true? The reason the true part's there is because almost no one accurately defines the political spectrum. Now, this political spectrum is not just one, okay? For the sake of this show, we're only going to be concerned with one metrics of left versus right primarily. But there's rules, right? Like there's rules to accurately defining a political spectrum, and this happens to be what I do in my professional career on outside of right-wing propaganda. So let's start off by saying the people you run into who go, oh, I'm neither like left or right, those people are fucking idiots. Those people are the dumbest motherfuckers you'll run into. Anyone who says I'm neither left or right is more than likely not accurately defining the political spectrum, but doesn't understand what a political spectrum means. If something is a spectrum, everything falls within it. So before I jump ahead of myself, let's get into what is a spectrum and how do you accurately define it. And I'm going to summarize it to 3 rules you need to have for creating a spectrum. The first rule is the 2 polar sides have to be innately opposites, right? You got to have one and negative one. You know, and I think this is the first pitfall. Because if you go ask the average dumb normie what's left and right, they would say, well, Republicanism is right and Democrats are left. But what does that even mean? There's no, Republicanism, we'll get into that, and we'll get into why I associate with them. But that's not innately different. I can think of a million things that Democrats and Republicans agree on. You know, I'll give you an accurate left-right paradigm. An accurate left-right paradigm would be conservative versus progressive, assuming that you're accurately defining the two. Now, when it comes to defining terms, keep it simple, stupid. And, you know, that's a sales term, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. But it's true. You got to keep it simple. If we define conservatism as someone who goes, hey, I like things the way they are, I don't want things to change. Okay, you're conserving the status quo. Okay, that's simple. Then progressivism would have to be the innate opposite of that. Like, hey, I want things to change, right? So there you go. You have some polar opposites. One side wants to not change, one side wants to change. So that's rule number one. Things have to be innately polarized. Rule number two, there has to be seemingly infinite shades from one extreme to the next, right? You got to have infinite shades of people being one thing or another relative to one another. That one's simple enough. The third one, and this is one where most people fuck up on, is it has to be encompassing of all examples, right? So what that means is I have to, whatever your definition is, if I throw an example of like, where does this person or this ideology fall? And if you go, that one doesn't apply to this, then it's not a spectrum. Everyone has to fall within it. There isn't a color that doesn't fit on the color spectrum, right? That's what a spectrum is. A spectrum is all-encompassing, innately polarized ends, and seemingly infinite shades. Great. So we got that out of the way. That's what a spectrum means. Now, with that said, there's only one spectrum I'm primarily concerned with. And that spectrum is, and it's arbitrary whether one side is left, one side is right, okay? But based on the American political landscape, it makes more sense to allocate the decentralization of power on the right and centralization of power on the left. Now, another way of looking at this could be collectivism on the left and individualism on the right. So what does that mean? Centralization of power. That means someone who believes that the way ideas should propagate, the ideas that should be instilled, are decided by a centralized entity, right? What could fall under that? And collectivism is the same thing, essentially, right? It's a tribe, and the tribal leaders make a decision. So what falls under that? What falls under that is fascism, communism, monarchies, right? You have a figurehead, and you could say, but like democracy chose that figurehead. Regardless, that figurehead decides a one-size-fits-all solution for the members of its society. Now, on the right side, you would have decentralization. So what would be an example of decentralization? An extreme example of decentralization would be individualism, right? Where the individual completely self-governs themselves through a voluntary interaction with their surrounding. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of will that work or not, it doesn't fucking matter. Let's just accurately label this map so we could have a productive conversation. Libertarianism, right? A couple shades to the left of anarchy, but same general idea where, you break it up to groups, to cities, and it's not the federal government that has this one-size top-down kind of system, but rather was decentralized. Even promoting state rights over federal would be a right-leaning ideology. Why? Because you want to break up the power. Instead of the federal government, a centralized power, having all the say, you have states. Okay, that's a step towards the right. And this is where the vector algebra comes in, which I'll talk about the next episode. But it's important to understand that, right? That means if someone wants state rights over federal rights, they want their vector, they want to push right. That is, they want to push society and culture to the right, to decentralization. Now, a lot of you, all three of you, might say, but communist hates fascism, and how could these two ideologies be so different if they're fighting each other? Well, what a stupid way to look at the world. Kingdoms fought each other. Monarchies fought each other. Did they have a different ideological belief? No. They had the same ideological belief. Why were they fighting? They were fighting because they want the seat of power. Fascism and communism and a lot of these leftist beliefs, sure, they fight each other. But they don't fight each other because they don't believe that in a top-down instructional society. They fight each other because they want the seat of power. So is it really a different ideology? And for those of you who want to act like fascism is a right-wing ideology, get the fuck out of here. The logo of the fascist is the fascista. A fascista is a bundle of sticks with a fucking axe on it. The reason that's their logo is because it's an innately collectivist allegory. The reason they picked the fascista is because the fascista symbolizes that, hey, if you're just one stick, you could be easily broken. But if you're a bundle of sticks, then you're hard to break, and the axe symbolizes their like authority, essentially. So there you go. It's a collectivist, leftist ideology. Yes, communists fight them. They only fight them because they want their brand of collectivism to be instilled in society. So that's a really important point. And that's a point that people constantly overlook. When they see Republicans and Democrats fighting, they assume they're ideologically opposed. Not really. Like, don't get me wrong, dude. Yeah, there's some minutia of differences, but that difference is not important. When we're talking about politics, we're talking about how does society function? How do these ideas propagate? Democrats, Republicans, fascists, communists have a lot in common. They want the same top-down instructions within society, but they just want their brand of it. That's it. That's the only difference. That's not a difference in ideology. That's just a difference of who's behind the steering wheel. So I'm glad we got that out of the way. So my show, once again, is about decentralization of power. Now, what I'm about to do here is actually an experiment. I'm curious, is coffee better for this show? Or who knows, what kind of fucking wacky shit am I going to talk about out there? I was supposed to show you guys this, forgot. Look at this blount. Beautiful. On the theme of, practice something until you become good at it. And honestly, man, that's actually something, it's a really powerful message, and I'm sure we've all heard it one way or another. That's the beauty of being a human being. You do anything. You want to fucking be a painter? I don't know, you want to be an acrobat? Whatever. If you just keep applying yourself, and I think the rule is like 10,000 hours, you spend 10,000 hours doing anything, you become a professional. It's fucking beautiful. Anyways, moral of the story, I've been applying this to blunts. Never knew how. I was always shitty at origami. Apparently I'm still shitty at rolling this blunt. It's not hitting. But no, this is actually an important part of the show. What I'm really doing is trying to figure out and train myself to talk like this with, like, I got cameras and shit around. It's just fucking uncomfortable. I'm trying to figure out and train myself to have the same conversation I have with my buddies when it comes to politics and this stuff. But with all these theatrics and shit, look, I got lights behind me. Like, if I can put some money into this. All right, second half. How do we win? Well, I got some ideas. So, I want you to brainstorm on this too. I want you to brainstorm, and I want you to DM me some ideas. How do we win? I'll throw out an idea. So, being as vocal as I've been about politics for the last 20 years, I've been called in by my HR department nearly a dozen times. Once, one of my bosses, the CEO, who we know was meeting with the FBI, one day he got drunk and he said, I think they're actually fucking around with this because of you, which is quite the compliment. But no, I'll tell you this much. I've been brought in and asked by the HR to kind of justify or, someone complain about something I said on the internet. And every single time, well, almost every single time, as soon as the discussion started, I let them know that what they're doing is highly fucking illegal. Why does it matter what my politics are? Are my numbers bad? Am I doing a bad job at work? Why the fuck are you calling me in here? That's my personal life. And the reason I bring this up is a lot of times people fold. And when the HR department, which I'm going to talk about a lot, because a lot of people assume the Silicon Valley is like a bunch of liberals, man. But in reality, it's the HR department that's a bunch of liberals, man. Most engineers, most scientists, kind of apathetic to politics. Why? Because it's not fucking science and it makes no sense and it's irrational and fucking illogical, right? So it's the HR. Anyways, we'll get into that. But standing your ground and letting them know that, hey, I fucking know my rights, dude, is quite the barrier. You'd actually be surprised how effective it is. But with that said, how is it that a discrimination lawyer at this day and age is not fucking making millions of dollars defending right-wing trolls on the internet? I don't understand. So here's a task I'm going to ask you. If you know a lawyer, especially if they're right-wing, ask them about it. Ask them about it. Tell them if they're willing to do it. If they don't know whether they're willing to do it, do they know a lawyer who specializes in this? And then send me their information. I will give you a bounty reward, okay? I'll give you money. You know you love money. And I will give you a bounty reward. I need to find these lawyers. I need to have them on this show, podcast, vlog, I don't know what the fuck it's called. And I need to bring a little sense of support and backup to people who are pushing for right-wing ideas on the internet. Okay, and this goes to my next point. My next point, which I'll bring in the stats and shit next time or whenever, is that apparently on Twitter, which, Jesus Christ, they get fucking, cartoons shut down in stores and this and that, right? Like, it's a very powerful tool, right? 2% of the American population create 80% of the matter, right? Now, let's just assume they're all politics and they're all leftists, right? Let's just be conservative about that stat. 2% of the population, get the fuck out of here. You're telling me that the right can't match them? Well, I know why they're not, because they're scared. Well, they're scared. And two, you got to understand, to the left, bitching about shit is their livelihood, okay? You know how many times in my undergrad I saw some minority get a full scholarship to universities. And you know what? Let's just say I'm okay with that. Let's say they have it unfair. That's not even the point. But the point is, they get into college and they immediately are attracted to social justice issues because a social justice issue got them into college in the first place, right? It kind of makes sense. Can't blame them. Then they graduate, and they tend to get really good grades. They're actually very studious. They memorize all the flashcards that their social science class makes them memorize. And then they get out of school, and they realize that their degrees are fucking worthless, right? They want to make money. They're not making any money. They have all these shiny degrees. They have this very shiny degree from a prestigious university, straight A's, yada, yada, yada. There's only really two realistic options for them. One, they go to law school and push that communist propaganda from within the system. The other one is they get more fancy fucking master's degrees in nonsense sciences and join the corporate world, typically through HR. Yeah. I'll get into that more later, but the moral of the story is, to the left, them being on Twitter and fucking shutting down Applebee's or whatever, entities, the victim of cancel culture that week, that's their livelihood. They get paid indirectly at worst to do that shit. Whereas the right-wing mentality, these are people who are actually producing a product for society. We got to start looking at being on Twitter and being on the internet as an act of charity. If you're sitting there and you're fucking complaining about how, oh my God, the left is taking over, but you're too fucking scared to say anything, something even benign, hey, I support Trump. I'm sorry. Yeah, I support the president. Yeah, I understand you're going to get shit for it, but you're going to get a lot more shit for it by acting like a fucking coward and losing our country. So I want to talk a lot about stuff like that too, to encourage other people to do this cringy shit that I'm doing. Get out there, make a fucking podcast, at worst, fucking a Facebook group. Say some shit, okay? I'm the only one out there and I look like a fucking lunatic, which I am. And it doesn't have to be that way. I've said this many times before. All the right has to do to win is stand up. Physically, vocally, all of it. That 2-3% revolution thing I was talking about earlier? That's it. We haven't even done that yet. Maybe we haven't done it yet because innately we know we already won. And that's a possibility. But I'm not getting that sense from most people on the right. Most people on the right who confide in me, they do so because they're fucking scared. They're scared that we are losing the culture war. And in a lot of ways we are. But you know what? You're not helping. You're not doing anything, okay? You got to start approaching talking shit on the internet as a charity, because that's exactly what it is, man. And we could win. We just got to do it. So that's going to be an important discussion that we're going to do. Encouraging other people, send me ideas, find lawyers, okay? Godfather 3, horrible movie. But my favorite line in Godfather 3 was when his nephew or some shit wanted to be a mobster. He wanted to help the family and climb ranks. The Godfather dude, he was all dude, I don't need more assassins, I need more lawyers. There's a lot of truth in that, man. Surround yourself with lawyers. Surround yourself with lawyers, and you'd be surprised how easy life gets. But of course, you got to afford them and this and that. But anyways, we'll get into that. The last point I want to talk about before I end this epic show is localism. I think we're going to win with a concept called localism. And localism, if you look at it, it's a fair compromise with the left, but it's a Trojan horse because it's essentially libertarianism, and it's the decentralization of power. Here's a gist of what localism is. And it's an ideology that I feel resonates with a lot of people. As soon as you hear it, you understand that that's just a logical approach to dealing with power and governments. So I won't give you an idea of what localism is, okay? It was like some political dude, Indian dude, who posted something like this on Twitter, and I'm going to add my own little cherry on top to it. So what he said was, around my family, I'm a communist. My immediate family, I'm a communist. Around my extended family, I'm a socialist. Around my city, I'm a Democrat. When it comes to state-level politics, I'm a Republican. When it comes to federal, I'm a libertarian. And here's my little twist. And when it comes to global events, I'm an anarchist. I want to leave you with that. Associating your political ideology correlated to your distance from it. This is really my kind of like flagship idea right now, right? This is what I'm really pushing right now, is this localism. Localism is an idea which we can win. And we can win on a local level. And once we win it on the local level and the state level, the idea will, I think, is going to propagate. So anywho, thank you for listening. I hope this wasn't too shitty. It's going to get better. And I honestly, man, I was really nervous about doing this, but I had a great fucking time. So this is definitely happening. Love you. Mwah.